Welcome to the Music Wide Open podcast
The place for an honest and thought-provoking conversation
about music,
business,
life,
technology,
and the future,
for curious music enthusiasts.
and musicians seeking personal growth. I'm Ingolf Wunder.
And I am Paulina Wunder. Today we will talk about stage fright or performance anxiety. It's a very human subject because in one way or another, everyone has experienced this feeling alone during some exams. But there are professional groups who must deal with it much more frequently than the average person. These include actors, athletes, public speakers, and last but not least, musicians. Exams, auditions, competitions, concerts. In other words, a life full of performances in front of people. And stage fright isn't something you fix once and for all. It can come and go. It all depends on many factors, which we will discuss. But before we do that, I would like to ask you, Ingolf, do you remember an event that gave you the biggest stage fright you've ever had?
To be honest, there is not one event that I particularly recall, one single event, but I do remember that the first full recital length concert I had to give at the university gave me a huge stress. I still have video recordings of them. Weren't so bad, but still that was a chore. and then the big competitions, the life-changing events that are basically rigged one way or the other.
Well, there is a luck factor involved.
Gave me, probably due to the fact that it didn't depend solely on me. That gives the most of stage fright in my case.
Yes, and solo performances are the most anxiety-inducing. It's a fact. And if one believes the statistics, they say around 80% of musicians experience some form of performance anxiety at some point in their careers. One rarely talks about it because, as we mentioned in one of the episodes, I think, What is a Musician? Musicians, well, basically no one likes that, but musicians don't like to appear weak or fearful. So it's not sexy to talk about it. Yet, not talking doesn't mean that anxiety affects only a few people. So it's a real thing, and the reasons for stage fright are also real.
Absolutely, but I was wondering though, when you were saying that solo performances are more scary than orchestra, like as a soloist playing with orchestra performances, because I remember in my case, the first times that you play like with really famous orchestras, there's a lot of stage fright going on.
But these are statistics, that's why one
Yeah,
has
I know,
to...
because I wouldn't say in my case that the solo recital is more stage fright inducing than playing the first time with a really good orchestra where you know they have played with everybody that is amazing, and you come as a young person there and have to basically show them that you're good enough.
You're not only judged by the public,
yes,
but as well by the
by
orchestra
the conductor
musicians.
sometimes, if there's not a friendly or super friend
Which happens.
relationship. So yeah, anyway, but yeah, absolutely, stage fright is a real thing, and it's too easy to kind of intellectualize that. Of course, there's evolution at work where your brain tags an audience as a social evaluative threat, and flipping the fight or flight mode on, which of course is not a life-threatening thing to play in front of people, but it feels like such. That's why you get the tremors. And of course, perfectionism, that's something for me that was really a killer.
Which is high self-pressure.
At the beginning, yes, because you just, I play, and even the best pianists in history always, and which is true, said, play every note as if it would be about life and death. And that there is something very liberating to that as well, and I do that. But this gives you as well the stress, because you're like, this is, you know, me, I'm playing here, and if I F up, then yeah, it's me that that is dying, and then this, of course, magnifying everything. And it's usually the self-doubt. It was like, did I do everything, or will I manage everything if I go to that particular place and there's a difficult fingering or whatever, and you know there's some chance that something will happen, and these places give you already before they happen stress and such things. But these are things that one can get used to, and one has to. One
has no choice in a way.
Yes, and for me, a lot of stage fright came in the past from thinking some important people are in the audience, or even worse, some people that you know and are not pro you.
Yeah.
Although they are not even, sometimes you see phantoms, you don't even, they are not even there, and you're checking the 1200th row and think this guy is there, and then like, ooh. So this you give up pretty soon, because it's
a killer.
Yeah.
Yes, but you know, I must say, you must mask it pretty well, because I haven't spotted your stage fright so often.
How you spot stage fright? Every time I see Horowitz, I think he's the most natural guy playing ever, and he supposedly had so much stage fright that he didn't even want to go on stage. Of course, he lost it probably while he was playing, but I don't know how to spot I think if you spot stage fright...
I'm not talking here about once you're on stage, but before, you know, I can talk about you because I see you before, right? So that's why
That's right.
We don't know how Horowitz was just before.
That's right.
They say that
they had to push him out or something. I don't know if
at
it's
some
true.
point of his life. Or I don't know.
If it's true.
Yes, but actually, some musicians, and it is genre independent. The stage fright. A lot of famous musicians had or have this issue with stage fright.
Yes, and it's kind of natural as well, because the more your name grows, the more expectation there is, and the higher the mountain is you have to climb every time you come on stage. At least it used to be like that. Nowadays, one sometimes thinks it doesn't matter how people play, and they always get a certain reaction. But it used to be very grueling, actually. It used to be, because they were really looking at every tiny little... I'm thinking now about the golden age of the piano, for example. Every tiny little interpretative nuance, and you had to get really everything right and be better than last time, because otherwise, yeah, it's not going anywhere.
But there are some famous people in history that one knows had an anxiety problem. Chopin alone had a stage fright issue, right? Stravinsky as well, I heard in his early career. Mainly due to fear of memory lapses and distractions while performances. Then we mentioned Horowitz, but stage fright is, of course, as I said already, genre independent. So it's not only about classical musicians. I heard even, I don't know whether it's accurate or not, that Barbara Streisand at some point avoided public performances for almost 30 years after a concert in which she forgot the lyrics. So, you know, the bigger you grow, just that I will let you talk. You mentioned this, the bigger the career is, right?
Yes, and
the greater the pressure.
Yes, absolutely. And I think it has directly something to do with sensitivity and with your own... Well, this is also sensitivity, your own capability of seeing what's the absolute best way to do music. Like, you know, there are certain people have so much, I guess, I mean, never met Chopin, but I guess he had such a rich inner world that probably, and he was very sensitive, right, that would fit the pattern, that if you expect then so much of even your own music then, because you know what it can sound like and you want to live up to it every time you play, And that gives you so much pressure that with all these other physiological symptoms you have when you go in front of people, that you just start to self-doubt, start to get crazy, because you know what you can do, you know what you want to hear. And
on top of that, we have fear of criticism.
Yeah.
And this is something that can eat you up as well.
Yes, and that also activates the self-focus spiral, that attention turns inwards. How am I doing? How, instead of out, what am I giving? You say, will I have that? How am I doing? How is it actually going? And then you start thinking in a spiral, and that gives you even more stress. And then it's kind of... And this is what you feel then at the end. And then at some point when it's too much for the organism, then you block, or your muscle doesn't move as it always does, and then you play a wrong note, and then comes another thing, and then you're like, what the hell am I doing? And then the best pianists, and I stick to piano because I know it the best, the best pianist had the ability to, if such a thing happened, to immediately switch and improvise, make something up, and maybe even improvise in the style of that piece that they just play, so that only the absolute professional listeners noticed even that something happened.
Right, but I'm pretty sure also this not always, because it also depends. There are many reasons for insecurities, right? Mm-hmm. So this is, you fear something, or you put so much pressure on yourself. But as well, sometimes simply one is not at one's best for whatever reasons. Yeah. There can be sickness, there can be tiredness,
lack of sleep,
or small injuries even, you cut your finger or whatever else, and people don't know about it because obviously nobody talks about it. Or mental state, something happens in your family or whatever there is. Sometimes mental state, I say that as an observer because I'm not a performing musician, but I'm not a musician at all, but I've experienced a lot of situations, and I observed a lot. And sometimes when one goes to a concert hall or to a venue, sometimes people are not so very nice.
The collective energy.
Yes. And then you meet, for example, some promoters are, for example, in my opinion, so grumpy and so unpleasant, I would say. Even maybe they are not even aware of that, but it puts... I can imagine it puts, or you can talk about that better. It brings this awkward mental state.
Yeah, one has to get used to that. I mean, used to that in that sense, one has to have a strategy to keep oneself out of this, or to switch to if something happens, because it's inevitable. It will happen because some people are just not on the same energy wavelength, and then some dissonance happens, and then it's up to you to learn.
Also this is connected to a level of sensitivity.
Yes. Of course, if you don't care, if you just do your thing, then...
No, but I'm talking even about the promoters or some people that one sees
on both sides.
On both sides, right? Some are very cute, some are extremely nice, and one feels so... And I believe that this is the only way how you actually can help a musician, an artist, because you feel like, I am wanted here.
Yes, absolutely true. So this is some mental work one has to do, and one has to probably find his own sort of tricks. This is very individual, so one has to go through it in order to, but has to first recognize it and then try to find his own ways to flip yourself into another mood that fits you again, so that you are capable of playing your best on stage.
And also, I think the awareness that other people actually deal with the same thing, and it's nothing bad because it's simply human to experience these feelings, is as well helping in a way. I'm not alone here.
Yeah, and sometimes even random things as well give you stress, because this is sometimes really funny, because you go from one concert hall to the other. Usually, almost always, the piano is different, the acoustics are different. But there, of course, if you play mostly one brand, like I do or I did, then there are some similarities in the piano. So, of course, they are all different, but there are sort of groups of, you have more heavy pianos, you have lighter pianos, you have sharper pianos, or more round ones in tone. And sometimes it's really random that you have a certain, a reverb that is coming from the hall combined with some key that felt a little bit like 2 days ago when at the concert something happened, then you start feeling funny, and all of a sudden the heartbeat goes up because like, whoa, what the hell, and such crazy things which actually don't really have to do anything with what's going to happen, because it's a different piano, different acoustics, but sometimes it's these kind of pattern matching events that give you stress.
That you're reminded.
Yes.
Something negative.
And so it's always about the negativity in the brain, and one has to stay like in this, people call it flow state, right? It's the state where you can basically be free and create and don't think about outer obstacles. And this is of course not so easy to get into that, but as always it's about repeating things and about getting used to things, and at some point you will, or one gets his own kind of small tricks, as I said, also on stage, and small rituals that help you get into that flow state.
Now about your rituals then.
Well, it's something that is very, I think I started late, but from the beginning I have sort of similar moves of putting the towel or putting the handkerchief into the piano, or going, even looking at the keys, probably touching the keys or the piano on the sides or whatever it is. I cannot even say that consciously, because it's something that just happens, because it's a program, and this program you have to create, and sort of that you feel like, okay, I'm here, I'm doing what I'm always doing, and then I go, and then you lose yourself in the music. This is my way, but of course for that one also has to really like playing, like in that sense that I know every musician
will say that he.
Otherwise, you don't become a musician. You have to like it.
At the beginning, yes, but then later it might be
but at some point,
necessity.
At some point, it becomes an office job for most of the people, and this is even
unfortunately.
Lately,
yes.
I got a quote from Hindemith. I don't remember it word by word, but it was about this: that few artists, also in his time, that was what, 40s, 50s, I don't remember. A few musicians did not lose the freshness of musical infancy, and I found that very to the point, actually, because it's this love for what one does, this freshness that comes with it, because you just like to do it. You lose if you go like
routine way.
If you play 200 concerts a year for 10 years or more, then you're like, okay.
Oh yes, again
yes,
I'm here.
And then you're doing the same, and this is how it also sounds. While in the past that was not the case, especially these televised concerts of the golden age of the piano, for example, they were not the 200th concert,
yes.
and you see that kind of freshness, and this is the spiritual thing that we often mention in this podcast.
That's true. Of course, if one plays so much and makes a routine out of that, then probably the stage fright experience is not as severe, but of course, that's not the point of playing music.
I don't know any studies of that, but I would gut feeling wise say that pianists nowadays have less stage fright than they did in the past. I don't know if it's true, but it feels like it.
Yeah.
Because
except for competitions, of course, because that's another
then some people shouldn't even play because they shake. I mean, their hands just literally shake so much that you see it on the camera.
So much nerves, yes.
But this is horrible. But I mean, generally on the professional circle, because as I said, I don't have any study for statistics proof for that, but it feels like this, because we mentioned that example, and I will not say that again, about Leschetizky and his student, when it was really about tiny little things that made the professor go nuts when the student did. But I think the pressure, now in the stage fright example, the pressure of high-level critics in the golden age and people who really cared about where classical music was so important. There was also much more money compared than now in individual recordings and concerts in the past. So there was much more pressure for the managers, for these kind of things. And music was more important. These fine musical nuances were much more important in the past. So I think for artists and interpreters, that gave them more stage fright than now, where you basically have to just play the notes and that's it. And if you do it 200 times a year, or maybe even if you play one concerto 50 times a year and you can play it without a mistake and nobody actually criticizes your interpretation choices or something, then
musicality.
Then you don't get stress from that, and you just
or
deliver
the lack of musicality.
Then you just deliver the notes and that's it. So that equals, to me, my gut feeling would equal less stage fright than in the past, when you think like, wow, I really have to deliver now something spiritual that nobody did before and beat my previous, maybe amazing if you were Horowitz or so, my previous amazing interpretations of that, because people already expect that. Then that gives you so much stress that you actually don't want to do it.
Well, who knows what are the reasons people are being stressed and nowadays for real. That's an individual thing as well.
Yes,
but
sure.
Because we mentioned here, the bigger career, the greater the pressure. So there are also musicians who, and they were in the past, even if they weren't really anxious before concerts in the past, they might experience stage fright at some point because of the pressure their career puts on them.
Yes.
They expect a lot from themselves, and there's lots of expectations, or was in the past, we will not measure.
I don't want to downplay, and of course today there's still pressure, obviously, because alone to play a difficult concerto or solo recital program and even playing only all notes is already stressful.
That's
right. I mean, this is...
But the fact remains the same, that on the musical level, people do see less nuances, or rather hear less nuances than they did in the past. And this is a fact, because one actually can read articles or interviews of some people that are in business and they are having a decision position, and they admit that it doesn't really matter anymore. So
it's a pity. But on the other hand, of course, nowadays, that's why I say I don't know if it's true what I said, because it's just a gut feeling. Because you have many more concerts going on, you have more travel, you have more stressful things that maybe give you more pressure just delivering the notes alone, because you're more tired, because you just came from another continent and are staying here only for 3 days and go to the next continent. So these kind of things you didn't have in the past to that extent. But
let's go back to the stage fright. Insecurities also come from the feeling that one is not entirely prepared. And this is a very important subject, that one actually is aware one did everything what one could have done.
Absolutely. This is probably one of the first things one should do, and this I sort of expect, because I was always trained to or told to prepare 2-3 times more in the practice room than I need on stage, because it will always feel different on stage. You will have, even if you did everything and you can do it in one way in the practice room, you might feel on that day entirely different. You might come to that section that gives you a bit of stress, but that you mastered at home. You will come with a different feel to it, and then you will all of a sudden think like, what the hell am I doing? And so in that sense, one has to always prepare 2-3 times more in the practice room, to really have, exactly as you said, that feeling that I have done everything. So of course you can never be sure, stuff might still happen.
Of course,
but yes, this is the most important thing.
And there are some musicians that really have trouble dealing with anxiety, and unfortunately they try to fight the stage fright in a, let's put it this way, a wrong way.
In a pill way?
Well, anything, it can be alcohol and...
yes, exactly.
Yes. By the way, I'm not sure if you remember that, because it happened a couple of times not in your case, because you don't drink before the concerts, but do you remember these dressing rooms, when you enter the dressing room before the concert and you see a bottle of wine and a glass prepared?
It's not often, but it happens.
It happens, and I'm always, this is incredible, we always take this wine to the room afterwards, but...
Well, the thing is, I mean, this is...
But it means for me that some musicians actually...
I mean, that's also...
enjoy a drink just before.
Absolutely.
It happens very rarely, we have to underline that, but it happens sometimes that some promoters provide a bottle of wine.
I think it's not so uncommon, also something much harder than wine.
This we'll as well talk about.
But here I will say something controversial, because at the end of the day, in the past, the best artworks, we don't know what was the alcohol,
Yes.
intake
That's
of
true.
and the state those greatest artworks were written in. I'm not saying that we should all drink. Absolutely not.
They say
I'm just
that,
a wine connoisseur, not drinker.
but this is off topic. Sorry to interrupt. That that they say, I don't know whether it's true or not. I read that once, that in ancient Greece, philosophers were, since the water quality was not so great always, they mixed that with wine.
Yeah.
And they were drinking most
And I
of the time.
think
And not only in Greece, because then later in
composers
France and
too. I mean, I think the
in,
best.
in
Yeah.
very many countries.
Water
in
was
Europe.
not so clean in the past.
Exactly.
Wine was safer.
Yes, right. It killed.
So, my point is that I'm
not
not
only
saying that,
it killed your stress, but
I'm not saying I'm not
But
telling our
bacteria.
listeners that they should all start drinking.
No.
But I think the level of whatever consciousness is. But we all know when you have, in my case, when you have a good glass of wine. I don't drink much more. But even then, when you drink a little bit, you get this kind of state of mind that is just looser. That gives you
for creation, it must be really.
it
might be really good. Yes.
Yeah, have more creative flow. Then it's not about that one should advertise for drinking.
But I think before concerts, this is a killer, because it's
absolutely,
you don't work on your body actually how to deal with it naturally.
I think so too, because we interpreters, one cannot forget, are also not only artists in the best case that should create also in the moment the interpretation, but have to also deliver in that sense, that really millimeters matter whether you hit the key or not. So of course many people do drink before the concert, and their organisms probably managed or got used to, but of course it's not a sustainable state.
no, and I think the problem is much bigger than one thing, and I would like to talk here about something that is as well not so popular, another unpretty subject, because it can start in a way, that's a wrong word, but let's say innocent. And I want to talk here about beta blockers, because many musicians take beta blockers for specific events such as exams or auditions or competitions. And we know it for a fact. It
can start even more innocent than that, with an aspirin.
Yes,
as we know.
Yes, we also know that.
Not on my own body, but on.
We know. Yes, yeah. we know that for a fact. That's not our own experience. But coming back to beta blockers, it's also something I feel, maybe I'm wrong, that has been normalized, although it's not normal and it shouldn't be. We even heard from one, sorry to say that, a moron, a mature person. If that would be a young person, then I would understand, just simply stupid. Oh, beta blockers, it's nothing, not a real drug. Well, it is, because it blocks the hormone adrenaline, which helps to slow down the heart rate and lower the blood pressure. So if you're a young, healthy person, and many students take that, and you don't have heart disease, you don't suffer from hypertension, you have to be aware it's not a candy that you take before each exam or competition or concert. And these are sometimes the teachers who invite students to take beta blockers, and who knows what else, right?
Well, it's terrible.
It all comes, the thing is that it all comes with a risk. If you can't learn how to manage stress and control your nerves naturally, you risk becoming dependent on substances whose use is not only ethically questionable, let's face it, but also dangerous. Because for some, it doesn't stop at supposedly innocent beta blockers, as we said. And I'm not talking here about rock musicians who take whatever there is, although it's maybe even mean to say that, because this is at least the reputation that they have, right? I'm talking here about classical musicians.
Yeah. It's not talked about, and I think as a young musician one has to be careful, because it rarely ends well. like decades later, right?
Yeah. And one sees that, one can spot that. And is it really worth to risk your life, to risk your health, to risk your happiness? It's not. For what?
I definitely think not. It's always, in all the fields, I mean, super stressed CEOs that have to work so hard and so long hours. There's also lots of drug taking there just to get more work done. And this is, of course, always it's a really tricky subject. Where's the threshold, right? I mean, for me, I know where my threshold is. I don't take drugs, period. But it's a philosophical question as well, because even in sports there are so rigorous doping tests, and there people talk about where doping begins and where doping ends.
I think they don't, I'm not sure, but I don't think they test for beta blockers, although that is, I think, as well was at some point discussed.
I don't even know, but I mean, even a supplement that enhances your strength is technically doping. Just doping is just something that isn't on the doping list in sports, right? In music, there's no doping list.
Thing, yes.
There's no doping tests. But this is, of course, a philosophical question. As I said, I think it's nicer to go into that, for me, flow state or meditative state or something like naturally. It's also possible. But of course, there are people who swear, some supplements give them something, even artistically probably, that they don't have without. And then it's hard to argue with personal reality. You cannot, right?
Of course.
One has to just, I think, for oneself, make the balance or ask oneself, what do I want from life? But it's definitely difficult and a topic that is actually not talked about at all in classical music, and actually it should be, especially for competitions, because in competitions it's like a sports event.
We mentioned that, but as well, humanly speaking, it is really not worth it. I think that if there would be more discussion about stress, anxiety, stage fright in general, in that space, in that classical music space, that people would open up and wouldn't feel like, I'm weak,
Yeah, or alone in the university or education path.
Because this is where it starts. It starts gradually, and then you go to some heavier stuff.
For example,
because of the pressure.
I have never had a course, or I was lucky enough to have contact with some of the greatest pianists in the world when I was already very young. So such topics, how to deal with things, came sort of without even having a course for that. Yeah. But even that...
And you never heard like you have to...
No,
sniff.
no. But to be honest, is what I wanted to say. I didn't, not about sniffing, but I didn't even get any practical tips from them either, because just I found my own ways to their experience or what they told me between the lines, right? Yeah. But it would be nice to, as a young musician, to have somebody telling you how to fight it, or some ways that could work for your stage fright. Such courses, I think, don't exist in curriculums.
Pity.
Because there is, of course, this is what I already started to say, that this kind of script, the first 30 seconds kind of thing. I mean, for me, is that I don't even know what I do exactly, because it's sort of this program, but creating such a program helps.
I will tell you what you do.
What am I doing?
Because you do that before each and every concert.
Okay, what am I doing?
You're yawning a lot. But there is a thing, of course, naturally, you don't force the yawning. Because yawning involves a deep inhalation that expands the chest, and you get simply more oxygen. So there is a biological process actually behind that. And I also heard, I'm not sure whether it's true or not, that yawning can help regulate brain temperature and increase blood flow to the brain, which may then help maintain alertness when one has stress.
Well, it makes very much sense, because this breath, or to manage the breathing this way, that you have a longer exhale, that really gives you the, even if the heart beats, that you kind of make something that the heart is somehow slowed down. You can't really slow it down anyway, but it's giving you the illusion of...
You can with beta blocker, but that's the not natural way.
So breathing is definitely also something one has to actually talk about.
Breathing exercises then.
But I never had such things. I just came up with these things without...
Well, you're yawning in a very natural way. But I have to... Sorry, this is Because this yawning sometimes leads to funny situations, especially when you start your yawning session and somebody comes in to your dressing room before the concert. Usually it's somebody from the venue, so promoter. And I don't know if you realize that, but we had that a couple of times. I'm always there, or most of the times. So I see that somebody looks at you, you start yawning, you don't even pay attention to this person really because you're focusing. And the person, I see that in the eyes, is scared that you didn't sleep well or you're tired or why the hell is he yawning, you know. So that's
true.
So that's
something involuntary. Yeah.
Yes, but also this is, you see, this shows us whether these people are not even aware of them, and this is a fact. The promoters or people working around concerts, let's say, that are not even aware of these biological processes of musicians.
True.
Again, education.
Yeah, and also it's this framing that all these symptoms, these physiological symptoms that you're feeling, that is the body actually preparing for delivering. Yes. And that can be, again, this is this where anxiety can be just renamed to excitement, and then I'm excited to play. It's the same symptoms. It's just our framing that says, oh, I'm scared now. And although you're probably excited to play. And just that mental shift also helps me a lot.
There is something to it, I think. And if one could shift one's attitude towards this fright.
Yeah.
Right, that would be very helpful.
Because the brain doesn't know the difference. It's really the same symptoms.
Well, of course, one is not really excited. Yes, I'm excited because I'm going to be judged now, and I fear rejection and I fear failure.
That's in our personal reality.
That's true.
I mean, of course, because everybody's judging everybody, but also if you go outside on the street and people look at you, some people will think, oh, he looks funny. Or, this is not the point.
You don't have to play a note.
So you would have to be having stage fright every day and all the time.
One has to as well, I think musicians probably are aware of that more or less. Sometimes I am surprised what they are not aware of. That one is being judged before one starts to play. Oh, what kind of shoes he has, or socks, or a dress, or hair, or whatever else happens. So,
Well, you see, that's what I mean. I mean, like
so the judgment is there always.
It's really what I learned, that it's in the personal reality. It is. I mean, everything is also. Anyway, but this especially, and it's just the world for you, because your personal reality just scares you, because you think like, if I don't do that right, or as I'm supposed to do it, my life's gonna end. But this is that fear is just in the personal reality. It's not real.
If one can shift from this to life is just a game, it's much easier to...
Yeah, or just this reframing that I'm excited to play, because of course if you are, for example, a pianist or a musician, and you are lucky even enough to be able to play in front of people, many people are not, that are super talented. They didn't get to that stage where they can actually show to other people what they can do. And if you are at that stage, that's already something that one should cherish, and something positive. I know this is what I said, just a reframing at the end. I know it's not just, because it seems like a big leap at the beginning, but then if one is over that, one thinks actually, well, it's not worth it. All that we said before is valid, that the bigger you grow, there are more and more intricate things that make your personal reality more and more difficult to deal with.
Well, that's why I think self-talk as well is important.
Yeah.
People sometimes, any kind of people, of course, they reject talking to themselves. I mean, it maybe is idiotic or it sounds idiotic, but I think it's very important.
It's very
you
important.
Talk to yourself, you analyze what you're doing, why you're doing.
And also just realizing that whenever you have mastered anything, it's easy. Yeah. It becomes easy. When you have done it the first time, then you will do something else that is difficult. But that what you did, what seemed to be impossible before, is easy because you know how to do it.
Yeah, but life is not a straight line.
Never is, but that's the beautiful thing.